Portland International Raceway, a beautiful natural terrain road course right on the edge of the Columbia River. I'm Paul Page, and this is ESPN's first coverage of the Indy cars for 1993. Our coverage will carry you right through the final race of the season, and the IndyCar champion will be crowned right here on ESPN. And who might that be? Well, best guess would be it should be Nigel Mansell. He is the points leader. He has been the points leader since the very first qualifying session this season. And since he is a road course master and we are in the midpoint of a series of road course runs, one would presume this is a time that he ought to lengthen his lead. But that's not happening. He didn't finish at Detroit and allowed Raul Boesel to close to within 3 points of him. So Nigel Mansell, if he is going to be a champion in his rookie year, has a great deal ahead of him. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, despite that disappointment at Detroit, it has been a sensational season, and for the fourth time now, he starts from the pole position. The third time this year, he has Emerson Fittipaldi right alongside. And at Detroit, there was controversy about the start. Now, Nigel is strapped in, awaiting the command to start engines. Nigel, any concerns, any apprehensions about this start with your good friend Emerson alongside today?
No, not really. As far as I'm concerned, if everybody is professional, and as they should be, the pole man sets the pace, and then when we come up to the start, we start racing. The only problem that's happened on a few starts is that people start racing before the start and finish line. And the rule book is very clear on this.
So Nigel is the man who will set the pace from the pole. He knows it. He will be in command. Now let's check back another row here on the starting grid as we go to our colleague Jan Beekes.
Well, Gary, right behind you and right behind Nigel is Stefan Johansson in the third position. And Tony Bentonhausen's crew is excited because they've split the factory Penske effort. Now, Stefan, you're also quickest this morning in this morning's warm-up, the fastest ever in a session for a Bentonhausen car. It's got to give you confidence.
Yeah, the car was running real good this morning. We had full tanks. It was a pretty accurate indication, I think. Now, of course, the weather is a lot hotter, so the setup may not be exactly the same, but I think we got a pretty good setup anyway.
Stefan Johansson standing by and looking for that first IndyCar victory. Paul?
So just some of the great stories that we have here for our first ESPN broadcast of the IndyCars this season. We're moving down toward the start of the engines. Coverage of the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 is brought to you today by PPG, world leaders in automotive finishes. By Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by Havoline Formula 3 motor oil. Add more life to your car. Back in Portland, the Indy cars are in position as the clock counts down to the start of the engines. Now, 2 weeks ago at Detroit, there were a number of controversial calls that have been discussed every moment since then, Derek Daly.
That's right. We are currently enjoying one of the best seasons of IndyCar racing for many years, but the controversy at Detroit did cause a bit of an uproar. Now, Al Jr.'s penalty when he hit the cones, he knew about that, so we have to say that was probably warranted. But the start line incident, when Emerson was judged to have gone ahead of Nigel Mansell at the start, that's the difficult one, because in the past the chief steward Wally Dallenbach has been a bit flexible how he calls these things. Now at Detroit he brought it right to the letter of the law and told the drivers he would do that. Now consider this, if he's totally inflexible in future, the pole man could actually come off the power at a critical time and cause the outside front row man to be ahead of him, and he knows he will get his opposition to get a black flag and go to the back of the grid. But consider this also, what if Wally was actually flexible? Now Emerson might have got away with Detroit what he did, or else he would have drawn a yellow flag. Now he's got a full lap under yellow, running slowly, conserving fuel, and fuel is a major issue here at a race at Portland. Well, another headache that Wally Dallenbach may have, and it's raising its head, it's blocking. Now what is blocking? It's not defined in the rule book. Is blocking good defensive driving, or is it bad defensive driving? We saw some track movements with Nigel Mansell and Stefan Johansson at Detroit, where Nigel clearly moved to hold Stefan back. Now, if you make a mistake or miss a gear, should you be allowed change your line dramatically to stop a pass? Well, that is one of the issues that Wally Dallenbach dealt with this morning in the drivers' meeting.
Apparently an extensive conversation on both the starts and blocking. So when Chief Steward Wally Dallenbach came out of the meeting, we asked him what the discussion was.
Well, it was discussed at the drivers' meeting that blocking is a concern of the drivers, and there's a thin line between defending your line and blocking, and it was pretty much agreed that Defending your line is a situation whereas if you're going into a right turn and you go to the right to protect your turn, you know, that's fair. If it becomes a situation where you do that and then go back to the left, that's the second act. It's the second and third acts is what we're going to watch today. If this occurs, the driver will receive a rolled black flag pointed to him that he's on call. He's going to be watched. If it persists, the black flag will be used, and he'll receive a black flag for a stop-and-go penalty, which will put him out of sequence with that situation.
Of course, Wally Dallenbach, a former IndyCar driver of great competence. That was not the only discussion that was held. Jan Beekes, they also talked a lot about the starting procedure.
That's right, Paul, and there has not been a rule change, but there's been a responsibility change. And that is that now the rules say, as they always have, that the pole sitter should cross the start line first. That has not changed. What has changed, the responsibility is no longer the chief steward's, it is the starter. So as the starter sees them come to the line, if he throws the green flag, it is a start. There will be no penalties. So everyone will be jockeying for a position. If they see a green, they know they got away with it.
So the Indy cars now sitting ready with some controversy still lingering and much to be discussed throughout the afternoon here in Portland.
Drivers, start your engines.
Down on the other side of the canopy.
All right.
So the drivers now in their cars, engines started, and we are very close to the start here at Portland. 3 laps behind the PPG pace cars, and then we'll see a green flag. So we're set and ready to go. Nigel Mansell sits in his cockpit, the view from alongside a new view from Scott Brayton's car. The view back from Nigel, and the field is set. Looking off the nose of Bobby Rahall's car. There's the front row. Nigel Mansell and Emerson Fittipaldi will give you the full rundown of the starting grid in just a moment as we're prepared to race the Indy cars at Portland. In the years the Indy cars have been coming here to Portland, we've watched so much growth in the downtown area, especially along the river. Many of us went down last night and spent a beautiful time in downtown Portland. So now, let's take a look at how the cars are ready to line up for the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. 29 cars here, and here is a look at the starting grid. On the pole, it's Nigel Mansell, the 4th pole of the season for the PPG points leader. Alongside Emerson Fittipaldi, the winner of last month's Indianapolis 500. In row 2 to the inside is Stefan Johansson, the best start ever for the sophomore from Sweden. And Paul Tracy is alongside the winner at Long Beach in April. In the 3rd row, Mario Andretti, a back-to-back winner here in 85 and 86. And Mark Smith, an astonishing qualifying run for the Oregon native. In the 4th row, it's Teo Fabi, who has never run worse than 7th here at Portland. And Danny Sullivan, the winner of that thriller in Detroit 2 weeks ago. In row 5, it's Al Unser Jr. His first career win came here in 1984. And Robbie Gordon, who ran 3rd in the season opener at Australia. The 6th row is Raul Boisel, has 3 runner-up efforts this season. And Mike Groff, who out-qualified his boss, Bobby Rahal. In the 7th row, Willie T. Ribbs, who had a strong run 2 weeks ago in Detroit. And Ari Leyendijk, who finished 2nd here in 88. In the 8th row, it's Bobby Rahal and Scott Goodyear. Row 9, Roberto Guerrero and Brian Till. In row number 10, Scott Brayton and Hiro Matsushita. Row 11, Olivier Briard and Jimmy Vassar. In the 12th row, it's David Kudrave and Kevin Kogan. Row 13, Lynn St. James and Ross Bentley. Row 14, Marco Greco and Johnny Unser. And in the 15th row, Jeff Wood. All of the cars cleared the start line cleanly, and they are on their parade laps. The fans all been given handkerchiefs to wave at the cars as they go by the promoters here, the Global Events Group in Portland. The track itself, the first time that we see the Indy cars on a natural terrain road course this year.
Officially, it's 9 turns here, but when you add the new festival curves, it actually brings it up to 12 turns in less than 2 miles, which means the drivers are very, very busy here. Here's a look at the new chicane. It brings the cars down to first gear, 35 miles an hour before you head off into the infield section full of double apex corners. Now, the hard acceleration onto the front and back straight here at Portland is what makes these cars use enormous amounts of fuel. the legitimate parking or overtaking area. It's at the end of the front straight here. It's very wide. There's plenty of room.
So the cars continue to circulate around this track. We take a look at some of the onboard cameras on Scott Brayton's left side pod. This camera mounted. A new view for us in the Indy cars. The look back from Nigel Mansell. As the Penske team lines up alongside and behind Bobby Rahall's nose cam, perhaps the most realistic view of what the driver actually experiences. And Danny Sullivan, as you look him right in the eye as he scrubs the tires, twisting the wheel back and forth.
Something I'd like to mention is Wally Dollenbach earlier mentioned the rolled black flag. It was a bit confusing to me. It literally means that rolled up, he will point it at somebody, and it's basically a warning. When he unfurls that flag and gives it to you, you know you are in trouble.
So the field now behind the pace car. Let's go down toward the chicane area and Gary Gerald.
Paul, this is the second year that they've incorporated what they call these festival turns or corners down here, and this is the excitement place. It is the place to pass, and now the field bunching up, this time coming by in parade formation for the final time. Next time it'll be all business. They'll be trying to battle for position. And remember, with a super wide front straightaway, it all funnels down to this very sharp right-hander, then back to the left. There's also a surface change. Asphalt to concrete that's very slippery, back to asphalt. It should be very exciting. The next time we see them, it'll all be business. Now let's go to Jan Bikas.
Well, Gary, there's a lot of action in the first turn, but there's always a lot of action in the pits. This is one of those races where there's a very small fuel pit window. In other words, you must pit lap 32 or lap 33. Now, the Chevrolets are in a little bit of fuel trouble here. They have to be careful, have to lean down the engines. The Fords don't seem to have a problem. Could be interesting strategy at the front. Paul?
Always has been a real consideration how the fuel is handled here on this track. Nigel Mansell, as we take a look at his challenge along with the 28 others, 102 laps, 199 miles, just barely 199. And Michael Andretti now in F1, the winner last year. And of course, Jan Bikas already indicated that the fuel window is very, very narrow indeed here. Doesn't allow any opportunity for a mistake. The temperature continues to climb. It's bright and sunny over the track. There is a possibility of rain, though the possibility was stronger in the morning. This track has been incredibly lucky for being located in the Pacific Northwest. They've gotten away with very little rain. In fact, it only rained in the entire history of the event on one afternoon practice session. So, Derek, now they line up. They take a look at the final turn, and the field in pretty good alignment here, but of course they're going to be thinking about the start.
And Emerson will be a bit gun-shy here, but look at this. Mansell gets a little jump. Now, he knows he has to lead. Emerson will be a bit gun-shy. Oh, Mansell takes a run at it.
So Nigel Mansell begins to throttle up coming off the quarter. The green flag comes out. They head down for that chicane as they begin to spread out. Bobby Rahal took an interesting line to the inside, well back in the field. The rest of the field coming through, three abreast in one area. Very tight in this section of the race course. The accordion down and everyone is through clean as Nigel Mansell pulls out into the lead, followed by Fittipaldi, Stefan Johansson, and Paul Tracy. Mansell taking advantage of a good start, now pulls a little bit away from Fittipaldi.
Well, he took advantage of pulling the wool over Emerson's eyes there. You see Mansell get sideways. These tires are still not warm. But Mansell was not going to wait for anybody. As soon as he came round, turn 9, he gave it all the power he had, and he was gone. There was no argument there that the pole sitter was going to lead the first lap.
Evenly spaced first, second, and third. Mansell, Fittipaldi, and Johansson. Paul Tracy is sitting in fourth place right now. As they come onto the start-finish straight for the first time. Mario Andretti sits back in fifth.
Johansson is in third place there. Jan mentioned it earlier. He had a tremendous run in the warm-up this morning, legitimately with that car full of fuel. Stefan knows that the Penske car is the best here this afternoon, or possibly one of the best, and he's quite prepared to bide his time here and let the race sort itself out, particularly in these early laps.
Derek, what about development between the Penske cars in the Penske team and the Penske driven by Johansson? Does he get help from the Penske organization?
He does get help, but believe it or not, they actually work separately. Tom Brown, who is one of the designers of the Penske car, works with Tony Bettenhausen. They work on their own tricks that Johansson likes. For example, he has a different rear suspension geometry, slightly altered from the factory cars, but he has a different rear suspension anti-roll bar because Johansson likes a stiffer rear end. They had to go and make one for him specifically because he liked it, so they do go their own way. But obviously you can see the performance of the factory cars and the private cars are very close.
On the start-finish straight again, evenly spaced. Got a glimpse of Paul Tracy there as he closes on Johansson, who closes on Fittipaldi. The three Penske cars right together. And turn after turn, Johansson has been able to close a little bit.
Under braking, he closes. You see Mansell just ahead. Mansell has watched these Penskes all through the weekend because he sees himself in the Lola, and then this big Penske attack comes all the time. I think the feeling is that as the race goes on, the Lola on full fuel becomes more difficult to handle. That is one of the things I personally going to watch for as this race begins to unfold.
Fifth place is Mario Andretti. Mark Smith is running in sixth right now, followed by Danny Sullivan, Robbie Gordon, Al Unser Jr., and Mike Groff. A spectacular run, by the way, by Groff, who managed to out-qualify his owner in the chassis that Bobby Rahal actually abandoned.
Here's Mark Smith. All his friends, all his neighbors, all his family, everybody is here to watch him this afternoon. It was a tremendous performance to drag this car up to sixth place on the grid. And really, for a rookie who has so little experience racing these cars, probably one of the biggest benefits he had with this new team was they did so much winter testing, and really it's showing its benefits now.
On board Danny Sullivan, that's Mark Smith just ahead as they battle for sixth place. Smith is able to pull ahead just a bit. Robbie Gordon is just behind Sullivan. Moisture on the lens there. Could be a light shower in the area, or could be something off the car in front of him. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. That is rain. I'm sure that is rain because he is too far behind Mark Smith for that just to be moisture coming out of him. It rained earlier today during one of the race, but it looks like there's small amounts of rain on that infield section.
So we'll keep an eye on that, though. Obviously, it is sunshiny over most of this race course, and it is not uncommon in this area of the country for you to have just almost a single cloud move overhead, drop a few drops of water, and then move on. Let's hope that's the case here today. The indication over on the front side of the track in the pit area here on the pit straight is that it's sunshiny, clear, and no rain whatsoever.
So here's the freight train. Look at Danny Sullivan behind him. Robbie Gordon right behind him, so he's going to fill his mirrors. Then Al Unser Jr. Never that worried about qualifying, but always a threat in the races.
So there is a report from some of the corner workers now of fluid coming out of the back of car 25, which of course is Mark Smith's car. So maybe in fact that's a miss from the back of the car, though, as you pointed out, Gary. He's a long way ahead of Danny Sullivan for that to be getting on the camera itself.
That's not from Mark Smith. Look how far ahead he is. But look, now we see blue sky here, but right outside our booth, when you look to the left, it is dark and gray. That is not from Mark Smith's car.
That's not coming from Mark Smith because he was all the way around the corner at that point.
Hopefully the kart observers aren't monitoring our radio and pull Mark Smith in for dropping fluid.
But they are going to black flag Mark Smith for what they report as a spray. So we'll keep an eye. There it is on the back of his car.
Right. You're absolutely right.
So as he comes down the start-finish straight here, Mark Smith will see the black flag, which will bring him into the pits so that the officials and his own crew can look the car over. And that's too bad because he's been running solidly in sixth place and closing on fifth place Mario Andretti. You're right now looking backwards from the leader, Nigel Mansell, second place Fittipaldi. They maintain station here at the front of the field. So Nigel Mansell leads from the pole here in the first laps at the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 from Portland International. Back at the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, nothing has changed at the top of the order, with the exception of Mark Smith slowing on the backstretch. Let's get an update from Jan.
Well, Paul, that liquid you saw does appear to be coming from Mark Smith's car, and now you just see them giving the sign that whatever it is, it's a terminal problem. They're investigating right now at the back of the car in the gearbox area. Mark had radioed in that he had hit a curb pretty hard and thought that may have affected the car. We can also see a lot of debris like grass or so on that maybe he did drop some wheels, and that is the effect.
That's too bad for Mark Smith. He had a spectacular run both in the morning session and in qualifying, and so much is expected out of him in his IndyCar career. So we wish him well. Hope it continues on. Back at the front of the field, the red number 5, Nigel Mansell, continues his lead. And for the time being, Derek, it seems that the Penske cars have decided to line up behind it.
Yeah, Mansell's in control here. Fittipaldi, we see him just about 2 or 3 car lengths back, able to just sit there, and Johansson sits back behind him. Interesting, I spoke to Mansell after qualifying. I said, does this remind you of any Formula One track anywhere? And he said, no, it's such a unique track. He couldn't really say that it was like anything else, except maybe a bit like Brands Hatch, some of the corners. But he said it's so unique, particularly, he said, driving down the back straight. He said, when you can see Mount Hood, he said, where can you ever get such a setting like that on a racetrack?
Looking back from Mansell's car, Fittipaldi, Johansson, and then Tracy as Robbie Gordon makes his move on Danny Sullivan, and Al Unser Jr. comes up to battle with Danny as well. So Robbie Gordon, as seems to be his style, moving very early in this race and moving toward the front.
Gordon was 3rd fastest in the warm-up this morning. It's the Ford engine versus the Chevrolet in both the Gallus cars there. Robbie Gordon, of course, so spectacular almost every time he goes on the racetrack this year. Didn't qualify as well as he had hoped, but now that he's got by Sullivan, it'll be interesting to see whether he can just inch away in A.J. Foyt's car.
The top 10 affected only by the retirement of Mark Smith and the move of Gordon, so it's Mansell, Fittipaldi, Johansson, Paul Tracy, Mario Andretti, then Robbie Gordon, Danny Sullivan, Al Unser Jr., Raul Boesel, and Mike Groff.
There's Boesel. You see Boesel's car. Again, not a man that ran as fast as we had expected because he's been so good in the last 2 or 3 races. But Dick Simon going through a development phase with his own cars. We mentioned the Penske cars being developed by Tony Bettenhausen. Dick Simon's own engineers, Julian Robertson in particular, are aerodynamically testing and developing this car, and it is different to other cars in the pit lane. It's difficult to get a close-up look, but they actually have a winglet, which is like a small wing, which sits sideways in front of their radiator inlets, ducting air around the side pod and hopefully making this car aerodynamically more efficient.
Let's jump back 2 positions now and ride with Bobby Rahal. He runs 11. That is his teammate, his employee, such as it is, in front of him, Mike Groff. And this is an interesting comparison because Rahal, remember, started the year in the Rahal-Hogan chassis. Then they decided it needed more development, and if they were going to make a bid for the championship, they should move back into a Lola until that car was more fully developed. But that car, the Rahal-Hogan, is exactly what is being driven now by Mike Groff. So let's just ride with Rahal for a lap or 2 here and watch the closure, and also we can get an idea of the gear changes.
This is first gear here. Double apex right-hander. They're 100 miles an hour through here. Listen to his throttle. Same gear. Now here's the blast down this long back straight. 175 miles an hour he'll reach here. This is 5th gear in this S's. Right up over the curve.
At the front of the field, Nigel Mansell now beginning to encounter slower traffic, and Emerson Fittipaldi has pulled up right behind him, using this opportunity of the slower traffic to close. Now this is where Fittipaldi, of course, has an advantage in that he is on a course. Looking at move outside of Nigel lets him know he's there. He has experience on this track and more experience with these other drivers. So Fittipaldi has an opportunity to use both of those attributes to his advantage at this point. They both get past the slower traffic, though, but still there's more ahead.
That was a good example of good defensive driving by Mansell. He never changed his line, but he drove straight to the apex. Therefore, Emerson had no chance to try and come down the inside while Mansell was slowed by that traffic, which attacked with Marco Greco.
We'll keep an eye on this fight for the lead, but in the meantime, let's check in with Jan Beekes.
Mark Smith is now out of the car. What was the problem, Mark?
We lost our differential about 5 laps into the race. It's too bad for the Craftsman RC Aero car. We had a good weekend going and thought we could have a strong result in the race.
Had to be real excited about that qualifying position, especially with all your friends and family here.
Yeah, it's good to be able to perform well in front of the home crowd. So credit to the whole team, especially Gordon Kopic and Scott Miller and Mark Wida. They did a great job getting the car set up. We'll just get after it at Cleveland.
Mark Smith out early, but a great run.
12 laps are complete here now. Danny Sullivan in 7th place, trying to hold off his teammate Al Unser Jr.
He mentioned the name Gordon Kopic, a man I'm very familiar with. He was my engineer back in Formula 1 in 1981 when we struggled for half the season at least on the March F1 car. So Gordon Kopic still motivated to be an engineer, loves working with drivers making racing cars go faster.
For the moment, this battle's static. We'll take a move back up toward the front of the field and take a look at the battle for the lead again, which remains unchanged, but now Fittipaldi is getting a little racy and beginning to pull up on Nigel Mansell from time to time, certainly to let him know that he's there, and further to threaten him as best he can.
And you can see from the in-car cameras and from behind, it's very difficult to make passes on this infield section, and the straights are long enough, but the braking area is only in the front straight here. Is it wide enough and long enough? So it's actually quite difficult to make a pass here.
Emerson Fittipaldi continues to run in second. An update, Gary Gerald?
Well, you indicated that Emo looks like he's feeling a little racy. That's what we hear from the radio conversation. The crew says Emo thinks his car is faster than Mansell's. Right now, he's content to hold that spot. They're also thinking about their first pit stop. They're scheduling lap 33 for the first of 2 expected stops today.
They come up behind Lynn St. James. Gary Gerald, they've always talked about what a fuel race this can be. And the Ford engine seems to have gone a little further in terms of distance as they very carefully, all top three move around Lynn St. James. And St. James cuts off Stefan Johansson. And here comes Paul Tracy closing right up on Johansson.
In the space of 2 seconds, see what happens there when you come on lap traffic. Stefan tried to go with Emerson and then backed off, realizing that Lynn St. James may not see exactly where he is. And that was all Paul Tracy needed to try and make a pounce, but he wasn't quite close enough.
Gary, what I was going to ask is whether or not the Chevy cars have a greater concern about fuel than the Ford cars.
I don't think there's any question about it. That seems to be the case. In fact, I talked with Tom Wirtz briefly, who is with Nigel Mansell, of course. I said, in a perfect world, how many laps of yellow do you need to not have any fuel concerns? He says, we don't need any yellow today. So the Ford people at least talking real brave up here on top. But we also remember the fuel concerns they had in the season opener at Australia. It got very dicey in the last couple of laps.
Fastest car at the moment is third in the line, Stefan Johansson. He's turned the fastest lap of the race at 111.2 miles an hour. 14 laps are gone. Well, if you like mountain biking, and Paul Tracy does, so by the way does Mark Smith, what better place than here in the Portland area? As Paul took an opportunity this week to get up on Mount Hood and see how well his bike worked. Right now, Paul Tracy runs in the 4th place, trying to catch up to Stefan Johansson. He was just behind him moments ago, but Johansson has managed to pull ahead again as they come through traffic. And first, second, and third, Mansell, Fittipaldi, Johansson run close together.
Mansell still looks to be in control here. Now, I suppose it's fair to say that we do believe the Ford engine might have a little bit more horsepower on the straights, which gives him this little comfort zone. Now, when we get into these long right-handers, he goes through here at 100 miles an hour. This long double right-hander, he said, the only thing he can think about that's like that is the horseshoe at Paul Ricard. But you can see that his last lap was, in fact, his fastest lap. So Mansell looks to me to be in fairly good control of the situation.
Ari Lyondike does a quick spin, gets it back into traffic. Right down there in those festival curves at the end of the pit straight, the home sprint here. Lyondike, who has been running just out of the top 10 in 12th place. And a team that had a fairly substantial and major announcement this weekend, Derek.
And of course, that was that they will no longer use these Lola cars that they're using for the last couple of years. They are changed to a new Reynard car that's being designed and built in England by Adrian Reynard's company. So the Ganassi team will use that, but Ari Lyondike has been struggling to find the type of form he can show.
Look at Fittipaldi.
Acceleration.
Fittipaldi tries now to make a move on Nigel Mansell. Moves to the outside. Moves to the end. Mansell sees him there. Again, the question of blocking has to be in their minds. They don't want to be called for it, but there's certainly no evidence of any blocking in that case.
Well, I don't know whether that was a misgear by Nigel, but you saw that Penske get the power to the road so much faster than the Lola driven by Mansell. But Mansell was able to just turn right, take the corner away from Emerson, the little flick to the right, and then pull away. But you can see now that the pressure is beginning to be turned up by Emerson and Stefan Johansson, who's still... No, he doesn't have fast as that, but he almost has. Stefan is quite happy just to sit there.
Fastest lap now turned by Fittipaldi at 111.5. So Fittipaldi is beginning to pick up the pace and put the pressure on Nigel Mansell. First, second, and third are the battle on the race course. The only true battle at the moment, and they run right together as Roger Penske keeps track of his car. Again, traffic just ahead.
Johnny Unser, but look at Emerson. He pounces again. Now Emerson takes a wider line on the way in, and he tries it again. He's side by side.
Same move that he tried last time. Can he keep it? He goes all the way off into the dirt. Johnny Unser just in front of him. Nigel Mansell may take advantage of that, and Fittipaldi has to drop in behind.
Well, we see it again. Fittipaldi gets traction down to the road better and shoots away, but Mansell knows the piece of road that he wants to use, and he's making things difficult for Emerson, as he's entitled to, because he's leading the race.
Now first through fourth all together on the race course, with Mario Andretti sitting in fifth and closing in as well. You see a good example here of how good the Penske cars are getting power down to the track, as again Fittipaldi works all over the back end of Nigel Mansell's car. Why, Derek Daly, are these Penske chassis so good all of a sudden?
Well, it would be easy to say it's packaging, but it is. All the details of this Penske chassis this year are just better, I believe, in racing conditions than the Lola. I think the traction is better. It's very good under braking. It's very good under full fuel load. That is the key to why this car all the time is good in racing conditions. Put 40 gallons of fuel into it, and it doesn't change as much as the Lola does. So I believe Mansell will fight this car a lot more than the Penske drivers will.
This time through, Fittipaldi decides to line up. He's telegraphed twice now to Nigel Mansell what his intent may be. Of course, it could simply be a feint. But now Fittipaldi comes up to line up behind Mansell once again, and Johansson and Paul Tracy close in. You can see that first through fourth are well separated from fifth place now.
Emerson checks his mirror, sees where Stefan is. As long as Stefan Johansson is not making a charge on Fittipaldi, he can take his ideal wider racing lines to try and make another attack on Mansell. And now, of course, it's a four-car train with Tracy hanging on to the back of these first four.
A furious battle at the front of the field once again, engaging traffic. That's Kevin Kogan, the 11 car that they come around. First time he has been on a road course since 1989. As he continues his recovery from serious injuries suffered in Indianapolis, but it's good to see Kevin back in a car. Jan Bikas, a comparison, Lola to Penske.
Well, when Derek was talking about the packaging that the Penske car has, the technical description that people are talking about here is downforce to drag ratio. What that means is the Penske car makes a little more downforce for a given amount of drag. Now, we also mentioned, or Paul, you mentioned that you thought the Ford had a little more power. So what we're seeing is about equal speed down the straightaway, but the Penske car has a little more downforce, and that is why he's able to get the power down a little bit better.
Fight continues at the front of the field. Fittipaldi took a look there for a second, dropped back, but still continues to chase Nigel Mansell, who has led now 21 laps of the 102-lap scheduled distance here. Lap 32 should be when they start to take a very hard look at getting into the pits. And once they do that, they have to make sure they get in very quickly. Paul Tracy looked to the inside of Stefan Johansson, then darts back to the outside.
Here's where Stefan got stuck the last time, but it's Emerson that gets stuck this time. Look at Tracy.
Oh, it worked for Paul Tracy. He moved way over to the left on Johansson and then came back across to the right. I think Johansson must have thought that he was going to get bottled up, but he didn't. He came screaming back into the other side and moves into third place.
And that is what you call seizing the moment. Sometimes the door is left open for a fraction of a second, and Paul Tracy just absolutely bolted through and takes the pass from Stefan Johansson.
Looking at one more time. Now watch Paul Tracy move all the way to one side.
Tells him he's there. Bentley moves aside, but now remember, Bentley can't drive off the racetrack, so he tries to stay out of everybody's way. Now Tracy is putting this pass together. Look how wide he is. Wide he is. Johansson slows down, and Tracy, using the traction of that Penske, just blows by him.
So a change here at the top of the order as Paul Tracy gets around Stefan Johansson. It's Mansell, Fittipaldi, Tracy, and Johansson, and Fittipaldi at the top of the field. We now have 23 laps complete in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. Back at the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, Nigel Mansell holds a slight lead over Emerson Fittipaldi. He has led right to the green flag. 24 laps are now complete. But you can see by the interval leaderboard that the entire front order, with the exception, of course, of Mario Andretti and Robbie Gordon, who are sitting back some distance, are all right together on the course. Jan Bikas, you have an update.
Well, Paul, after that exchange between Nigel Mansell and then also between Emerson Fittipaldi, when the two of them were dicing, Emerson has called in and complained of blocking. Now, you both described you didn't think it was blatant blocking, but remember, in lieu of what happened in the drivers' meeting, that all the drivers, if there's anything suspect, they will call in just in case, so that their crews will appeal to IndyCar, hoping maybe something would be done. So we know it's not flagrant, but all drivers will try anything for an advantage.
Hey, talk about a team sport. Get the rest of the team in your corner here.
We'll keep an eye on Mansell, Fittipaldi, and Tracy as Kevin Cogan's car being pushed back into the paddock area. And we'll get an update on why he is out. Kevin Cogan sitting on the edge of the wall. And now on board with Scott Brayton, this new angle. You can see how the steering arms are working on this car and the whole front suspension movement, but also take a look ahead at the sky.
Yes.
Clouds moving into the area.
We mentioned those earlier on, but you're right. You see the suspension. That's the push rod activating the shock absorbers, which are up under the cowling on the front of the tub of this car. Now, just see how much movement there is in this. That actually is quite a bit, considering these cars are so stiffly sprung these days. But Scott Brayton broke his toe here earlier, jogging, trying to stay fit, jogging out of the hotel through some bushes and stubbed his toe on a concrete block. So I don't think he's in too much pain, but I don't think he was that impressed.
Fascinating view of how the front suspension members work. Perhaps in the future we can move it back even a little more, right until the crew says, okay, you've seen just about all we're going to let you see of our suspension. Let's watch as he goes into the curve.
See that big jump for the suspension. Right here, which is the end of turn 8 and 9, he crashed on Friday with Roberto Guerrero. Guerrero was trying to avoid Matsushita, who spun. Guerrero backed off. Brayton didn't see the yellow flag and just plowed into the back of him. That's why you see a black nose cone on that car as opposed to the standard Amway pink one, because of course they had to get a hurried repair job done. Now Mansell is under pressure here.
And Fittipaldi moves way wide as they come into the first corner, looking for racing room. Mansell loses control, locks it up, comes off into the chicane area. Fittipaldi goes into the lead. Mansell's car should be undamaged. They try to get that cone out from under the wing, and now he should be able to go ahead. Coming straight through the chicane, he's supposed to stop there. The ruling was there was supposed to be a lengthy stop of perhaps as many as 10 seconds. He did not do that. We'll see how the officials react to that one. But Mansell, of course, wanted to get back in pursuit just as fast as he could.
And you could see it beginning to unfold as he accelerated out of turn 9. He moved to the center of the road, then he moved to the right. Emerson had to go down the outside, and Mansell was off the clean line with the good grip, locked up the brakes, and had no recourse except to sail through the chicane and catch. Now this is where it unfolded. Look at this. Mansell moves to the inside. He's entitled to do that. He's not changing his line. Emerson goes down the outside. Now Mansell is on the gray. That's it. He locks up the rear brakes, catches the marker cone. Now watch his hand. Look at his hand. Look. He's saying to the official, get rid of that marker cone as soon as possible. I'm out of here. Now where do they have to stop, Paul? At the stop sign or just stop?
Somewhere within there, there's supposed to be a 10-second interval, and that's what I was questioning in my own mind. The IndyCar control is saying that he was there long enough to account for that. Jan Bikas, you were listening to that discussion in the drivers' meeting this morning.
Yes, Paul, what the determination is that you have to be there between 7 and 10 seconds because they time the cars going through the complex. That's how long it takes. You don't have to stop specifically at that stop. So as long as he was there, as IndyCar is saying for between 7 and 10 seconds, he should be okay.
And while they were taking the cone out, that time elapsed, so they've said, go ahead. This is the onboard camera view, same path.
Okay, Emerson goes down the outside. Now Nigel locks the rears. See that? He's out of control. Emerson goes through the corner, and Nigel has to stop.
And that mistake cost Mansell, in terms of real race course time, 8.5 seconds, and dropped him back into 4th place. His teammate Mario Andretti is the next in the line behind him. You see Mansell now runs all alone. And this has given a very definite advantage as we complete lap 29 to Fittipaldi in terms of the fuel stop upcoming here in just a few laps.
That's right. Penske 1, 2, 3. The only Lola challenge now being mounted by this man, Nigel Mansell. And he knew going into the race that as this race unfolds, this car will get more difficult to drive. Look at this. He's sideways. He's sideways in 3rd gear under acceleration. So now really beginning to have to fight this car.
Fittipaldi has turned the fastest lap of the race now at 112.6 miles an hour. But we'll keep an eye on Mansell's speed because he's going to hustle this car, which is very light on fuel now, as fast as he can.
And Emerson had radioed that Mansell was blocking. That was not blocking what we saw. That was Mansell choosing the line that he wanted and making Emerson go around the outside. Look at this. Corrections, 2 and 3 under heavy acceleration in 2nd gear. So Mansell now has his hands full with this Lola.
And look at the sky just ahead. Rain could come as a factor here very quickly. And if it does, let's consider who's very good in the rain. Fittipaldi, Mansell,
Nigel
even
Mansell.
Stefan Johansson. So 30 laps are now complete. The pit stop should be coming up shortly. Pit crews signaling up and down the line to their cars to come in. And here comes Paul Tracy. Jan Vikas is there.
We had a look at the speed, and he made it in. He was under the speed limit, which is 80 miles an hour in the pit. So far, Paul is okay. And he's also passed. He's working on that is his helmet strap. He just pulled off his helmet strap. That obviously must have been giving him a lot of trouble. That's difficult to get off your arm, Paul. But now he can't find the gear. Now it's in gear. He's underway, and he's past the radar gun, so we know he made it. Now we see Emerson Fittipaldi starting to lay out.
So Fittipaldi's crew is ready. Johansson's car, they have a problem on the right front with the car. He's been in the pits now 30 seconds, and finally he gets back into the fight. But he has suffered greatly by this stop on the 32nd lap. Paul Tracy and Johansson in. Bobby Rahall's stop is complete as he roars back into the fight. Waiting now for the stop by the leader, Emerson Fittipaldi and Nigel Mansell, who has moved into 2nd place. And here comes Fittipaldi, Jan.
Emerson Fittipaldi on the way in. Again, we check the speed. He's okay also. That's a real concern here with the Penske crew. We don't see any changes taking place. It should be a standard, fill it up with fuel, and 4-tire change. Everything's smooth so far. None of the frustration like we saw with Paul Tracy. Our leader's waiting for that last bit of fuel. He's on the ground. He's gone. Let's go to Gary.
Nigel Mansell is in. He radioed, said it's touchdown time. Here he is for his first service of the day. They talked about a worker bill change at the rear wing, then decided not to. They're keeping the balance just the same. He's gone in 15.8 seconds, Paul.
And look how carefully Emerson Fittipaldi came out of the pits. Nigel Mansell comes up to speed carefully as well. Remember, these are cold tires, and that's a very sharp corner that they have to adjust for right out of the pit lane.
Something unusual Mansell has to deal with. Remember, every time he makes a pit stop in Formula 1, the tires are almost up to working temperatures because of the expensive warmer blankets they use in the pit lane. He doesn't have that luxury here.
New leader is this car, Mario Andretti. He has not yet stopped. He is due in for a stop at any time. Probably on this lap, he makes his turn into the corner. So now the leader, Mario Andretti, comes down into the pits. Robbie Gordon, driving for A.J. Foyt, comes in behind him. Gordon closed up as close to Mario as he could. Now Kerry Gerald waits for Mario.
Well, we see the nose of the car. He glides it in with all those years of experience. Perfectly hits the marks that are so critical. You miss the marks, and you can't couple the fueling and the vent hoses, but no problem for Mario. We're looking to see if they make any changes up front. No wing changes that we can see. They wanted to latch down the Wickerbill latch in the back. They slap a piece of tape on it. Mario has gone in just over 15 seconds.
And threading his way out right in front of Robbie Gordon again. So those were almost identical pit stops as Gordon comes in ready to attack Mario.
And this is tires here. Remember, Robbie Gordon has all the bravery that you need. Mario has the experience. Look at Gordon. Gordon may try and make a pass here on cold tires.
Back at the front of the field now. There's Mario as he continues his battle with Robbie Gordon just behind him. Gordon, who has had some spectacular runs thus far in the IndyCar and should at just any time score his first victory as well. There are so many drivers, Gordon, Johansson among them, that are so ripe for a victory.
You have to remember the key to pit stops is not just the time that you spend stopped in the pit lane. It's how quickly you get in and how quickly you get out and complete that first lap on cold tires. That can make a big difference. There's Johansson behind Gordon. So he's trying to make up from his lengthy pit stop.
Danny Sullivan picked up the lead of the race during these pit stops. Now he has completed his stop going 35 laps before he has to. And so, as a result, he comes out behind this battle and is now joined by Stefan Johansson, with Fittipaldi reinstated as the leader of the race.
Johansson is currently in 7th place. You see Sullivan, look, he's checking his mirrors to see who's behind him. You can see the sticker still on those tires, which we say sticker tires all the time. That literally means Goodyear have their own white stickers on the tires designating that they are in fact new and with a code number. That's what we use. That's what we use the slang term sticker tires. That's what we mean by that.
So several things have happened. Here is Lynn St. James, local favorite because of her Nike sponsorship. Nike is headquartered here in Portland. Lynn St. James getting her service from the Dick Simon crew. Now let's consider things that have happened. Johansson had an incredibly long pit stop, nearly 33 seconds. That put him back in the order. He runs in 7th. And Mansell ran straight off the end of the front stretch in his battle with Fittipaldi. That put him behind, and he sits now in 3rd place. So the order is Fittipaldi in the lead, followed by Paul Tracy, Nigel Mansell, Mario Andretti, Robbie Gordon, and Stefan Johansson. So here is a battle for 5th place as Johansson takes a hard look at Robbie Gordon.
You see Lynn St. James pulls aside, lets the battle go ahead, but Olivia Grillard in the Regency racing car hanging on to Stefan Johansson there. But Gordon's man that he wants to pass is Mario. That's the battle here for 4th place.
Robbie Gordon driving for A.J. Foyt. A.J. helping him every chance he can get. Robbie having the opportunity to take advantage of Foyt's vast knowledge of the IndyCars. The grand champion, the winningest driver ever in the sport.
Now, Robbie Gordon obviously is very much in a learning mode this year. Nigel Mansell takes different lines to most people here. Mike Franifus took Robbie Gordon by the hand up to the festival curve, sat him down on the grandstand and said, look, watch Mansell. He does things differently. And the next day, Robbie Gordon was doing it just like Mansell. But Johansson is running slowly on the back straight.
Johansson comes totally off the pace. Gary Gerald, do you know what it is?
Well, we're standing by. Tony Bentonhausen, Paul Diatlovich, the entire crew huddling here. The problem on the pit stop was a malfunctioning air jack. That's going to be critical on their next anticipated stop. But now apparently there's a new problem. And I'm not sure that anybody is certain of just what that problem is. Tony, do you have any idea what the problem is at the moment?
Yeah, he's lost some gears in the gearbox. Something's happened inside the transmission, so.
All right, thank you, Tony. Car's in now, Paul. They jump on it, but this could be a serious problem. Now they've shut off the engine.
As they reach for the cowling on Stefan Johansson's car, it is still Emerson Fittipaldi in the number 4 car in front, being chased by his teammate, Paul Tracy, and Nigel Mansell. Here at 8 o'clock Eastern. Well, Emerson Fittipaldi threads his way through traffic, and in doing so has managed to separate himself from his teammate, 2nd place Paul Tracy. Jan Vikas, do you have an update?
Well, speaking of Emerson Fittipaldi, let's remember he has the same type of gearbox that what Stefan Johansson does. It's a transverse gearbox that's in the Penske chassis. They only have 5 gears. It's transverse means it's mounted longitudinally. What that means is sideways, and therefore it's more aerodynamic. So obviously Roger Penske and the Penske crew must be concerned because Portland is known for being hard on gearboxes.
Well, you saw the man who suffered most from it, which is Stefan Johansson, who is now out of the car. And of
course, one of the more unique features of that gearbox is the fact that it is sequential. Just like a motorcycle, you go one forward for first gear, and then you keep pulling the lever back for second, third, fourth, and fifth. It makes for a faster gear change, and of course a faster gear change means that you're on the power earlier and faster. You go faster down the straight.
You know, when you talk about doing that, though, there are occasions when you may want to go, say, 6 to 4. There are times when under heavy braking you might do that. How would you handle it in that gearbox? Does it change so fast that it works for you?
You still have to hit it twice. If you want to go down 2 gears or 3 gears, you have to hit it once, twice, or 3 times.
Well, Stefan Johansson has suffered from his gearbox. Here's Gary Gerald.
Stefan, we know it was the gearbox problem. Had you not had that problem, did you think you had enough muscle that you could win this race?
It was going to be marginal. I think it was a question of, you know, coming down to the laps at the end of the race with the fuel mileage and so on, because it was running green all the time out there, and I was running real conservative on the fuel just to be able to attack hard at the end of the race. So, you know, I just wanted to stay close enough to the leaders to be able to attack in the last 20 laps of the race.
Now, you had a problem on the pit stop with an air jack, I guess, that malfunctioned, so it kind of comes raining and pouring here all at once.
Yeah, you know, it's... I hope it's going to change one of these days.
We hope so, too. A terrific qualifying effort. We wish you well in Cleveland in a couple of weeks. Stefan Johansson. Boy, what a tough one, Paul.
And the second time this year that he suffered from that. He had a gearbox failure at Phoenix just before the halfway point. Mario Andretti with Robbie Gordon now closing in just behind him. Gordon has come up from time to time to the back of the car, and this now looks like a very serious fight with Al Unser Jr. coming up, beginning to challenge Gordon. So it's a three-way battle for fourth place.
Al Jr. very good in these chasing situations. Robbie Gordon knows that. See the way Gordon moves to the right side of the track under braking. Al Jr. has to take the wide line. But Robbie Gordon will have his hands full trying to fend off Al Jr. Ford versus Chevrolet.
On part of the track, the report is rain. So now this sends a whole new factor into this race. What will they do? Stay on these tires, which are very difficult, or go to this kind of tire? Go to a full rain tire compound, which if the course is dry in some areas, wet in the others, could wear down very quickly.
Well, it could, and the decision is going to be ultimately with the driver. If he thinks he can handle the rain on slick tires, go for it. The biggest problem is it is so dicey and so dangerous and so difficult sometimes that you can fly off the road, and then all chance of a good result is gone. Now, it's not raining on the front straight here by our booth, but it is raining out on the back section, just like it did in a race earlier today.
Keeping an eye on this battle and keeping an eye on the clouds as well as Robbie Gordon in the Copenhagen car makes a move to the inside. And look at him lose the back end there. That is one of the places where rain has been reported, and it's very slick through there. You can see a drop of rain now, a second one on the camera. So now Robbie Gordon lines up looking for an open room alongside of Mario Andretti. He closes in.
And when youth and bravery get into rainy, difficult situations and conditions, they often win out. Experience, oh, you can see the rain now in our camera lens, very slippery. But youth and bravery very often makes very fast racing cars when it rains.
And now Al Unser Jr. also challenging Robbie Gordon. Jan Beekes, what about the strategy involving rain tires versus slicks? As Al Unser Jr., by the way, moves to the inside, tries to get alongside Gordon, but can't do it. Go ahead, Jan.
Well, we checked with Emerson Fittipaldi's crew, and they're leaving it up to Emerson, just like Derek was saying. The responsibility does lie on the driver. They feel we'll have heavy rain here, but only for a brief moment. They're willing to put on the rain tires and then go back to the slicks. They feel that will still play okay into the fuel mileage versus pit window. So they're ready here with the rain tires. It'll be Emerson's choice, and just like you said, it'll be experience that makes the difference here. But ultimately, the driver's choice.
Robbie Gordon's battle through an area that continues to see sprinkles broken off for the moment, and his fight with Mario Andretti as they work their way around Scott Brayton. But now
Bozell is
even
there.
Closer closing on Bozell, closing on Al Unser Jr. And take a look at this. This is Brayton's car. The middle of this fight shows you how much water is truly out there.
Well, it is raining now in the infield section. Brayton moves out of the way. That was Al Unser Jr. that went by with Robbie Gordon. But it is raining on these infield corners, and Tracy. Yes, it is Tracy that's makes the first one to make a pit stop.
So Paul Tracy makes a move down toward the pit area. A change for rain tires, Jan Beekes.
Paul Tracy was the first to go for rain tires. Now we know that he has had some contact with walls and off-course excursions. Paul Tracy is definitely one driver that does not want to take a chance on slipping off the road. 11.2 seconds, he's underway. Again, his speed is okay. Paul Tracy taking a chance because if it stops raining, those tires will burn up, Paul.
They're laid out for Emerson Fittipaldi as well as we look at Posel continuing his fight with Robbie Gordon. Al Unser Jr. was able to get around Gordon, and they continue to fight. These cars on slick tires in this, the wet section of the course, what they call the festival curves, and then leading in third, fourth, fifth corner of this track.
Now we'll see who's quickest. Al Jr. is on hot slicks, and Tracy is on wet weather tires. Oh, Fabi is off the road.
Teo Fabi apparently drove it off the course as rain is coming down even harder now, and I would imagine that the rest of the field very shortly will make a decision to move over to the rain tires.
And you can see Al Jr. on the slicks has managed to pass Paul Tracy, but the decision will have to be made very soon. You can see it's dry here, but in that infield section it will be very difficult on those slick tires if it's raining hard.
And as with the small shower or thunder shower moving through the area, the wind over on the front straight has begun to pick up. In fact, some of the raindrops coming by almost horizontally here now on the front straightaway as the rain becomes a little more generalized. But as yet, only Paul Tracy has made the decision. You can see now the rain coming down fairly hard in some sections of the course. Raul Boisel has opted to head into the pits for rain tires. How soon will Fittipaldi make his move? I would guess he'd make it almost any time now.
Well, Paul Tracy may get a big advantage here being the first man to stop, because if it rains hard, he will have the advantage, and Fittipaldi will run slowly on the rainy surface, but he still elects not to come into the pit lane.
Fittipaldi stays out. Mansell is in second place. He is well back, though, from Fittipaldi. And for the time being, Mansell also decides to stay out. I wonder if Fittipaldi might be keen off of what Mansell does.
I don't know, but Al Jr. has just made a pit stop. He's on wet weather tires, and Fittipaldi on hot slicks still has enough grip to fly by him. So Fittipaldi obviously believes at the moment the gamble is worth taking, that he should stay out, even though it's in unusual conditions. Look at the rain now in our camera lens.
So Fittipaldi continues to stay out on these slick tires. Of course, he is a master in the rain, and for the moment, he is willing to take the opportunity to stay on the slicks. You got to look at a substantial difference in times there between his fastest lap and his last lap. Here comes Mario Andretti. Harold is waiting for him.
Indeed, Paul, we have been here at pit out, and we've seen 10 cars go by with the wet tires. Mario now will be the 11th as they put the treaded tires on. Lynn St. James just goes by with the rain, so now half of the field are on rain tires. It continues to rain. The wind continues to blow here at the pit end as we go to Jan Beekes now further along pit road.
We are standing by just behind you, Gary, as Emerson comes in just as Danny Sullivan goes out. Emerson rolls it in right on the marks. It was his call. As we talked about from the booth, he waited a little longer than anyone else. He wanted to see if maybe these clouds were going to go over and he might get lucky and it would dry up. All the tires are on. Very quick stop. 10.9 seconds. The reason is, Paul, not as much fuel had to come in. They can make quicker stops.
So as Fittipaldi comes out, well ahead of him, Mansell came by. Mansell is still on dry tires. Most of the field now has moved over to slicks. Ride with Nigel Mansell and tell me, do you think it's raining out there?
Well, now, what is Mansell going to do? He's the only big correction there under acceleration. You can see it's still raining. Our camera lens tries to clear that water away as much as possible. I'm not sure he can stay out here much longer in these type of conditions when he knows everybody that he's racing against, primarily the Penske's, are already on wet weather tires.
In fact, let's keep an eye on him because the indications are, look, it's dry over here on the backside of the course, at least certainly not raining as hard as it was on the front side, but the indication is that Mansell's team will call him in and he will change over. As look at there, as Guerrero straight off the course, right behind Mansell at the time.
Mansell elects to stay out. Now, it's obviously very, very slippery because we saw Guerrero turn left at the end of the straight, and he never made the right-hand turn, went straight off the road and clouted that outside barrier very, very hard.
Update on Nigel Mansell, Gary.
Just as in the other situations, Paul, it is Nigel Mansell as the driver who makes the call. The crew thought certainly he would be in on the last lap. They had the tires over the wall. They were ready. Mansell, however, says, I'm going to gamble and go for at least another lap. And now it's not raining as hard here at pit out in the Mansell pit as it was just 2-3 minutes ago.
Plus, the wind is blowing briskly head on down the front straightaway here. So if it stops raining, it could also dry very quickly.
Well, one of the reasons Mansell would even bother to take a gamble here is he knows in the dry conditions, head-to-head, he can't beat Emerson Fittipaldi, I don't believe. So he is going to take a gamble that hopefully it'll stop raining. Everybody on wet tires will have to make another stop. If he can hang on, he will have a big advantage. But I'm not sure how long he can hang on. We see the tow truck head off out to try and collect Roberto Guerrero's car.
49 laps. The 102-lap scheduled distance are complete. The first pit stop's done by everybody, then an extra pit stop for most. Now look here, Roberto Guerrero. Now watch him. We were focused on Mansell, and then Guerrero was suddenly gone. He just came straight off the corner, head on into the barrier, though fortunately it looks like a fairly light tap. We will wait for IndyCar's official word on the condition of Roberto Guerrero, but it looks like he should have been able to climb out of that car without any trouble whatsoever. So some changes here in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, and Mansell is back on top. Back at the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, Nigel Mansell, still on slick tires, has still opted not to come into the pits, tiptoes his way around the rest of the field and continues to lead. He is now 8.23 seconds ahead of second place Emerson Fittipaldi. But Fittipaldi has been closing down. Fittipaldi was 12 seconds behind just a few laps ago. Here are the lap leaders in this race thus far. Of course, back to Nigel Mansell at the front of the field.
Okay, Nigel says the gamble is too much. Emerson, he knows, is on wets, and he's closing in on him much faster than he's comfortable with. So the gamble is too much. He's got to go for wet tires.
Gary Gerald watches as Nigel Mansell pulls in.
And as he comes down pit road and the crew awaits him, it rains harder now at this end of the pits than it has at any time. So he pushed it as far as he could. He was in the minority of those who hadn't gone to the wet tires. Now he makes that sacrifice. Still waiting to come off the jacks. Not a fast stop. Problems at the left rear. Now he's down. Still not away. 17.8 seconds, Paul.
So Mansell makes his stop. There's another car, the number 1 car of Bobby Rahal, who runs now in third, and he is still on his dry tires.
Look at
also, Ari Leyendyk is still on dry tires, but there's an indication of the difference of adhesion as Paul Tracy comes past Rahal. He does have rains.
Well, I mean, Mansell now, having realized the gamble was too much, you'll probably see Bobby Rahal now head for the pit lane too, because he was probably going with the same reasons as Mansell was, that this car is not quick enough, but he can get a better result by going with the gamble. However, it looks like it's too much because this rain is not letting up. In fact, it's getting worse.
Of course, with only an 8-second interval, Fittipaldi moved into the lead as Mansell moved in for his rain tires. And look at Rahal as now he uses even more of the circuit. Still on the dry tires. We'll keep an eye on Rahal.
Rahal struggled here all weekend, only qualified 15th. I asked him, do you think this is a good or a bad car? He said all they need is test mileage. He has not had a single test day with this car. Look at, he twitches sideways. He's not had a test day with this car since he replaced his RHO1 chassis at Milwaukee. Test time is all he says he needs to make this faster.
Rahal continues to stay out, perhaps encouraged by the fact that he's able to stay in contact with second place Paul Tracy, despite the fact that Tracy is on his wet tires.
Well, looking at our lap times here, there is only 1 mile-an-hour difference between the lap times of Tracy and Rahal. That is not a big difference. I'm surprised that Rahal on slicks has that amount of grip to even be able to keep Paul Tracy in sight. But look at this here. This is becoming a monsoon.
Yeah, but remember that Rahal won in very heavy rain at the Meadowlands in 1989. Jan Vikas?
Well,
Paul, according to Bernie Marcus, who is Rahal's engineer, he says, hey, we're the fastest car on the racetrack right now, so there's no reason for us to pit. Bobby knows how to drive in these slick conditions, so we're going to leave him out there. There's no reason to come in. And we think these clouds are going to pass over, and this is the advantage that we've been looking for. So far, Bobby Rahal, the quickest in the slickest conditions.
Well, we have the advantage of the EDS scoring system here with a computer that can give us all of those times, and maybe they should look again, because right now he is running a little behind what the rest of the leaders are capable of. He's running at 90 miles an hour, and Fittipaldi and Tracy are running 90, 91 miles an hour. Debris on the course. Tracy got into it. Should it be a problem?
I hope not, but it can cut these tires so easily. Now you can clearly see this is where it begins to rain. Look how shiny the surface is. But Paul Tracy did hit a piece of a front wing that was lying on the racetrack. We're going to have a good look at the car. You can see some damage on the left front wing of Tracy's car. We might get a good close-up look of that. I don't think it's too serious. You can just see a black mark on the left front wing of Tracy's car. Oh, he gets her sideways under power. There you can clearly see the carbon fiber pieces broken that Tracy must have hit earlier.
But if you're going to run over something, wouldn't you prefer to do it with the thicker tread on the rain tire?
Well, ideally you prefer to try and avoid it, but you come across this stuff so fast you can't avoid it. You can't actually change your line when it's such a greasy condition like that, because you can easily spin. There's our first look at Mike Groff being chased by Paul Tracy. Mike Groff, of course, in Rahal, the Rahal Hogan chassis. I thought he did a great job in qualifying, and in fact he said the car wasn't too bad. He actually qualified that 12th ahead of his team leader, Bobby Rahal.
He runs in 12th right now, with Paul Tracy closing in, trying to put him a lap down. Emerson Fittipaldi already has done so. So it's Fittipaldi, Tracy, Rahal, Mansell, Allenzer Jr., Mario Andretti, Robbie Gordon, Raul Boesel, Ari Luyendyk. And there's the story. Bobby Rahal continues to run on dry tires, having completed only a single stop. It should be a battle, and you'll see it here on ESPN. Keeping an eye on Emerson Fittipaldi, the leader of the run, followed by his teammate Paul Tracy, but Tracy is a full 20 seconds behind. What about Bobby Rahal, Jan Beekes?
Well, he waited as long as he could. As we've talked about, it's raining harder and harder. Bobby Rahal has finally made the decision to pit. The team has rolled out. The tires are waiting. They're talking to him as he's coming down. We'll see him shortly. Yes, we see him in the pit lane now. He's making his way down. Bernie, this is difficult too. Remember, you're on a very slick surface. He throws off a tear-off. He's on his way in. Very slow for dry standards, but that's about as quick as you can go on slicks in the rain. Stops it. Ooh, the vent man was a little late there getting the fuel on. Now, also remember, this is not lap 67. What that means is they did not make their window. Rahal will have to make one more stop, and he's away.
Scott Goodyear cut through the carousel corner and has a flat right rear tire.
And it's wet tires, so he better hope. What he needs to do now is go slow enough that he doesn't disintegrate that right rear tire before he gets back to the pit lane and cause some body or suspension damage. So he needs to go fast enough not to lose too much time and slow enough not to break something.
And look at now how it pulls the left front off the ground because of the flat right rear.
Of course, yeah, the cars are so stiffly sprung. Oh, look, he locks up that rear tire because there's so little grip, because there's no air in that. He locks it up. But the car literally sits down on that right rear side, lifting the left front off the ground sometimes.
Scott Goodyear was running in 12th place prior to this problem, which is going to put him well back. So Bobby Rahal has joined everyone else on the rain tires. When he came out of the pits, Willie T. Ribbs exceeded the 80-mile-an-hour speed limit. They had him clocked at 90, so they brought him in and out for a stop-and-go penalty, and he is back out now running in 15th place. At the front of the field, it is still Emerson Fittipaldi, Paul Tracy, and Nigel Mansell, though there is a fairly substantial separation between those. So let's go down pit side once again, and Gary Gerald.
An apparent problem for Ari Luyendyk. Yes, it was a flat and destroyed, we see now, left rear tire. Badly cut up on the inside. We wondered why he came in, because he'd made the change to the rain tire, but he came in because the left rear apparently got cut down, and this is somewhat of a surprise because they just put a brand new rain on there just moments ago.
Lyondike running in 11th place now. Here comes Scott Goodyear after 10 seconds to get that new tire, Jan Vikas.
Yes, it was the exact same problem that Gary was describing that happened with Arie Lyondike. There is a right rear tire here that is cut down, as you saw as you're watching him going around the course. So very similar problems for Scott Goodyear as well as for Arie Lyondike, both with quick stops.
There you saw as they went into the carousel corner what may be some of the debris that is causing the problem here. Obviously, somebody doesn't have a front wing on the car, and we are going down through the field trying to find out whom that may be. Now, most of the wing, once it's detached, is fairly soft, but there's still some fasteners and upright material there that can be very sharp.
And it's a Penske front wing. So whose car has that come off? That is a Penske front wing, I believe.
There's the answer. No,
it's not that one.
Not that one. So we look for Paul Tracy. Fittipaldi's obviously in good shape.
I do believe that Hall set decal is the one that's on the Penske front wings.
And
yay or nay?
No, that's good.
In fact, I think that's incorrect. They're actually Turbo Garrett, which you can just about read on Emerson. So let's look to see who has actually dropped that front wing off. And of course, it was at the chicane where too many cars get into too small an area sometimes.
So they get the noses together. As a matter of fact, most of the teams this morning brought out extra entire nose assemblies, which include the front wings on the car, just in case of such a confrontation. So whoever may have had that problem may, in fact, by this time already be back with a newly fitted nose and front wing assembly. Emerson Fittipaldi is the leader. Paul Tracy is second. Nigel Mansell third. Al Unser Jr. is fourth. In fifth is Bobby Rahal. Then Mario Andretti, Robbie Gordon, Raul Boesel, Danny Sullivan, and Mike Groffes. Take a look. Lyondike off the course.
Struggling to get grip even in the dry. Now he's on wet weather tires. Sometimes when the rain comes, bad handling cars can actually turn out to be better in the rain than they are in the dry. But Lyondike, as you can see clearly, struggling along the grass.
So Lyondike, who was in and out of the pits with a cut tire, is now on and off the race course and back in the action. Continues to run in 11th place. Fittipaldi continues to be the leader. 60 laps are complete.
Today's coverage of the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200 is brought to you by Toyo Tires. No matter what you drive, we've got you covered from H to Z. And by Budweiser. Fresh, pure, natural. Proud to be your bud. In the rain in the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200, Danny Sullivan off course. Now one of the volunteer course marshals here. Talking to him, Danny trying to tell him what he would like and whether or not he'd like to get back into the fight, and apparently he at least wants the car pushed out of where it is, perhaps even back onto the racetrack. Sullivan was running in 10th place before his excursion off the course. 6 cars are on the lead lap together. Fittipaldi, Tracy Mansell, Al Unser Jr., Bobby Rahal, and Mario Andretti.
And we did see Sullivan running very slowly just a couple of minutes ago because we saw Fittipaldi blow by the inside. Same place as Sullivan went off. Robbie Gordon goes on the grass.
Robbie Gordon.
Did he keep it running? Yes, he did. The key is you have to keep the engine running when you get off on the grass, or else you are stuck there.
Robbie Gordon was in a battle with Raul Boesel that had just broken off just prior to this excursion off the course. But now, fortunately, because he did keep the motor running, kicked the clutch in early, he is able to get back into the fight. For Danny Sullivan, it will be much harder because even if he can get a tow, then it's still going to be very slick underneath. We take a look at Boesel now, who does not fight for position, but picks up an advantage and really locks those tires up under the rain. And there you see some wing damage on the front left wing.
That's not the one that we're trying to identify that still lies out on the corner at the Festival Curves, but Boesel has obviously hit somebody. He has made contact with somebody.
Well, one indication is it could be a wing off of Willie T. Ribb's car. I'm sure Jan and Gary are running up and down every pit saying, you have all your wings with you?
You can see Boesel doesn't have all his. He's lost the end plate and he's lost a small winglet, which is on the outside of the front wing. And all that does, of course, is just give him a little bit less downforce. And in these conditions, maybe he'll miss it, maybe he won't.
Yeah, does it matter at all?
Just keep the thing straight and you're gonna get more benefit than you will just have the perfect amount of downforce.
As as we watch Raul Boesel in the rain. Jan Vikas.
Well, Paul, he has a lot of World Sports Car Endurance Racing Championship experience. And when he was in Europe, he was known as the Rainmeister. He was the one who always had the very strong performances in the rain in that World Sports Car, what we know as GTP here. So Raul Boesel, very happy that it is, in fact, raining. Also, because they've really been chasing the setup here, this is the real equalizer.
Showing you how the speeds do change. Emerson Fittipaldi has been running laps at 88 miles an hour. Tracy has been up to 89 miles an hour. And at the same time, Boesel is running just a tick under 88 miles an hour. If you call the rain the equalizer, it certainly is, because there's only a mile an hour in speed difference that separates the first 9 cars on the course. Now a chance to watch another master in the rain, Nigel Mansell. Let's just ride with him for just a moment.
Driving in the rain requires a very delicate touch from the throttle. Listen to how easy Mansell treats this car. See how gentle he is? Correction. Oh, see this correction on the way into the corner. But Mansell is a master in the rain, in the dry too, but in the rain, Mansell has won many, many races. You have to be very delicate, have that deft touch with the brakes and the throttle to be fast and to last.
Gary Gerald has an update on Nigel.
Interesting. Now, we couldn't see him as you're watching the video of him tiptoe around the course, but when he came in and made the change, he wanted them to take some wing out at the front. Normally, when you go to the wets and you've got the rain situation, you need the downforce. They put wing in. Now we understand from radio conversations that maybe they need to make the change back. So he's kind of compounded the situation, and that deft touch is really being challenged right now.
Gary, given all of that and the fact that they last stopped about 17 to 20 laps ago, what do you think the pit stop strategy will be for the remainder of the race now?
Well, we heard from the Penske camp that they're looking at about a mid-80s, around 84, 85 for a stop for Emerson Fittipaldi. Keep in mind that Nigel went a few more laps beyond what Fittipaldi did before he made the change going to the wet tires.
Yes, Nigel came out of the pits 13 laps ago, Fittipaldi 17.
The rain that you see is exactly what's on his visor. He does not have the luxury, though, of the visor being able to clear that rain away. And here is final confirmation that we found an owner of that errant wing right here, and it does belong to Willie T. Ribbs.
And not likely to stop and pick it up. A quick spin by Mike Groff, and he's back on the course. Remember, this is the True Sports car from the past. Now the Ray Hall Hogan car, still under development. Much expected out of this car, and its future expected to carry a Honda engine.
He has been testing the Honda engine. In fact, he spent 3 days at Indianapolis last week testing the Honda. It sounds fantastic. He did 219 miles an hour in very much a race and a test trim. So Mike Groff very excited. He said it is every young driver's dream to ever think he could drive alongside somebody of the caliber of Bobby Rahal. So I'm glad to see that Mike Groff, having struggled to find a clear path for his career, has finally settled into a proven IndyCar driver.
Mike Groff runs in 9th place now. The rain continues to fall. It is still Fittipaldi at the front, and he is unchallenged. Another car off the circuit.
Marco Greco is not going to take any further part. This is the Team Losi car run by Dennis McCormick from Indianapolis, and he's stalled the engine. We mentioned it earlier. You have to keep the engine running because it's so difficult to push start these cars and drop the clutch and get the wheels spinning to get the wheels turning to start the engine.
The 99 car is Brian Till. He runs in 11th place. Just ahead of him, Olivier Griard. It's not a battle for position, but it's a good run for Brian Till in his first race this year. Up to 11th place now.
And he was surprised that he even drove here. Got a phone call from Norm Turley. This is the car that Eddie Cheever drove. Look how close they get here. But Norm Turley called him up, said, do you want to come and drive my car? Brian Till, who's still, in fact, oh, look at this wheel-to-wheel stuff here. But he's still working on his own Robco racing program to get back to Indy cars on a full-time basis for next season.
Again, not a fight for position. Griard runs in 7th place, but it doesn't mean you can't have fun in the rain.
Olivier Gruyer, coming from France, has driven many times in the rain, and big cars like Formula One cars in the rain, so he's well used to these type of conditions. It's a Lola versus a Penske, followed by another Lola.
Everyone being very careful now. No one truly in contact with one another for position. There is Paul Tracy. He runs in second as he comes up behind Boesel. Boesel is in seventh, a lap behind the leaders of the race, and when Tracy gets around, he goes even further back. So 67 laps are now complete. The rain continues to fall, but it has brightened just a little bit over on the pit straight. In the mist at Portland, it is Fittipaldi still in front. Paul Tracy rides in second, but look at the red number 5, Nigel Mansell. He is closing down on Paul Tracy and using traffic at the same time to his advantage. That is Briard that separates Tracy and Mansell. As we'll keep an eye on this battle, the race recap after 66 laps with Fittipaldi as the leader and the average speed of the race at 101 miles an hour despite the rain. 3 leaders, 5 lead changes, no full course cautions, though plenty of people off the course. We saw Roberto Guerrero actually get in contact with the wall, but he climbed out of the car and is okay.
Red 5 is in attack mode here. That's Paul Tracy running second, but Mansell is all over him, about to give him trouble. Now look, Mansell gets the bad run in traffic here. He's in fact boxed in behind Willie T. Ribbs and Danny Sullivan. That won't do him any good. Gets the car sideways, under power.
Willie T. sees the circumstance, tries to clear as far to the left as he can to let Mansell by, but Danny Sullivan is still in full race operation, and he is going to run along with Mansell.
Now look at the visibility here. Mansell does not have the luxury, I said it earlier, of the lens clearing. So as the water gathers, he has to somehow look through it. Now it's Ford versus Chevrolet in this drag race down the front straight. Mansell's on the inside, Sullivan is on the outside, and he's just, he's beside him, just about able to make the pass. Look how grey and murky that front straight is, and those drivers come down there above 170 miles an hour.
When you have that much moisture on the helmet, Derek, how much is the visibility? Look at him, he almost loses the back end again. What about the inside of the helmet with his breathing? Does it tend to mist up?
The whole key, that's Brian Till. Brian Till gone through the chicane. Hopefully he's kept the engine running. I don't think he has, but the key to being able to see in wet conditions like this is to have airflow under the helmet, air flowing on the inside of the visor, which continues to try and keep the moisture away. Obviously we see that Danny Sullivan did get running again, but look at Boesel. Boesel now is in his mirror.
Boesel right there challenging him.
And you see here, we talk about airflow. Danny Sullivan has actually cracked the front of his helmet, allows air in and back out to the bottom of the helmet, keeping the visor clear so he can at least partially see where he's going.
So Danny Sullivan and Boesel battle. Sullivan, of course, well back at 19th.
It's the worst.
Boesel at 7th.
It's the worst feeling when you cannot clear the mist off the inside of your visor because you daren't make a pit stop, so you try and squint and turn your head and look upside down, look sideways, however you can do it. But it is a scary feeling sometimes when you just can't see when you're traveling above 170 miles an hour.
The straightaway somewhat foreshortened by the camera's view, but still it gives you an idea how much moisture thrown up off the rear tires of these cars. Gary Gerald.
Paul, we were just checking in, and you're talking about the visibility problems. It would seem like, as race fans, are conscious of vision forward. Interesting that Danny Sullivan, when he was in that traffic, was on his radio wanting to know if there was anybody behind him, because he couldn't tell in the mirrors in the rooster tail if there was somebody that he had to be worrying about off his backside. So it's not only visibility forward, you've got to be concerned about what's on the backside of you as well.
Danny Sullivan and Raul Boesel continue their fight. Nothing changes at the front of the field except that Emerson Fittipaldi is able to pull even further ahead of his teammate Paul Tracy. Fittipaldi now has a 34-second lead over second place Paul Tracy, and for the moment the battle between Tracy and Mansell has broken off.
And that's Emerson's daughter, watches on. She's been here all weekend. Her dad's had his arm around her every time he gets out of the car. But she doesn't look too comfortable there sitting in the rain. A bit miserable, not Brazilian-style weather.
Fittipaldi, by the way, excited. He has been invited to take a ride in an F-18 with the Blue Angels. Now, I happen to go down and take a ride with the Blue Angels in an F-18 just to make sure.
Well, imagine imagine that.
To make sure everything was safe for Emerson. I wanted to make sure that everything was all right. But now he's very close to his ride. And then if everything works out all right, maybe we'll let you in on this. The new captain of the USS Kitty Hawk, the carrier based in San Diego, Bear Pickavance, is just taken over the carrier, and maybe we can all figure out how to ride. Now, why does Bear Pickavance come into it? Because he's the guy that got to drive Bobby Rahall's car in return for giving Bobby Rahal an F-18 ride. You're the only one that hasn't been in the cockpit, Derek.
Well, imagine that. You're my buddy.
Dave Coudrave on and off the course.
So go on, tell me. Your signed picture's on the wall down there, Paul, isn't it?
No problem. You want to go ride and just talk to your friend.
Yeah.
So at the front of the field, still Emerson Fittipaldi. Paul Tracy still in pursuit. No one in the field at all in contact, direct contact for race position. So the rain very definitely a factor here, but one would presume that because of the rain, certainly fuel is no longer a problem either. And they will run to the end. The question is, are they capable of catching Emerson Fittipaldi? Paul Tracy and Nigel Mansell will try. Back at the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 at Portland, all positions run static. These IndyCar drivers can make handling adjustments to the car suspension during a race. Jan Bikas tells us how.
During an IndyCar race, it's common for a car's handling to change throughout the duration of the race. So all modern-day IndyCars have driver-adjustable anti-roll bars. What that means is a driver can either stiffen or soften the anti-roll bars, which will change the handling, hopefully making the car faster. The problem is you have to use your left hand. You really want to have both hands on the steering wheel. So if you're taking your right hand constantly off the steering wheel to do your shifting like you would normally do, like on a road circuit, you might go back and forth 30 times a lap. If you had to make an adjustment with the left hand, you'd have nothing left on the steering wheel if you had to shift. The only time you can use your left hand really is at the end of the straightaway when you're in top gear. The other thing that's difficult, it's hard to tell what position you're in on these adjusters. There's 6 different positions. You wouldn't ever want to look down and take your eyes off the road. So on a Penske car, they have contact switches as well as resistors. When you move the lever, what happens is it drives some LED lights that are up on the top of the dashboard. When you move the lever, the corresponding LED will move, telling the driver what position it's in. Now, that may seem complex, but it's very similar to what you'd use with a slot car controller. So we talk about technology coming to racing. Now, slot car technology has made its way to IndyCar racing.
So some adjustments being made to the anti-roll bars, the sway bars in the cockpit.
The anti-roll bar or anti-sway bar, whatever you want to call it, it can be called either thing. When you make it softer, it makes the suspension in all 4 corners softer, more supple, rides over the bumps and absorbs the road better, and can very often give you more grip, particularly on low-speed corners. Of course, the higher the speed, you need to have the car nice and stiff and stiffen up that roll bar. I've seen people actually disconnect those roll bars sometimes and improve the handling.
Well, they used to disconnect them regularly in the rain. Jan Bikas, what do they do in the rain now?
Well, that is what you'd want to do in the rain, is disconnect it. But of course, all these cars started on a dry setup. Interestingly, this has some very slow corners through the festival complex, as it's called, and some of the teams had already disconnected them, even in the dry. What that means is their drivers are no longer available or have available to actually make adjustments during the race. So therefore, you still have to wait until the pit stop to make a wing adjustment or a tire pressure change.
Well, the report from all of the course marshaling stations around this course is that the rain itself has stopped. Now, there's still water, of course, on the racetrack, but it will drain fairly quickly, especially with the help of race cars cutting through any place where the rain may accumulate.
David Coudrave moves wide to let Emerson Fittipaldi go down the inside. Coudrave driving for Euro Motorsport. We saw him spin earlier on, but he moves aside, lets Emerson pass him into the festival curves. Maybe he can learn something from Emerson as he goes through these slow-speed corners.
Fittipaldi still well out in front of second place Paul Tracy. Fuel no longer a factor. The rain is, but the change that could come now is as the course dries, Derek, these tires are going to wear very quickly.
They will wear very quickly. It's not dry enough yet, though. But these cars you watch here, immaculately prepared always. Well, one of those men who usually prepares the cars here is Chief Mechanic Richard Buck. Usually works with Paul Tracy. He is not here this weekend. he was off enjoying himself and relaxing and managed to break his collarbone.
What, riding his motorcycle?
Well, or his mountain bike or something, but he's at home in Reading, Pennsylvania, watching the progress of his team cars.
Well, at the moment, his team, the Penske organization, runs first and second, 77 laps complete. Back at Portland International, the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. This is the leader, Emerson Fittipaldi, car number 4. It's been 30 laps since his last pit stop. The rain will allow him to go a little bit further before he needs the fuel. Second place car, Paul Tracy. It's been 33 laps since his last stop.
The Chevrolet engine goes through constant development. They're on Gen 4, which is Generation 4 now, of the engine management system, which is basically the software, the computer software that controls this complete engine program here. And in fact, some people think that Penske gets all the trick stuff. In fact, Danny Sullivan in Detroit had the latest software in his Chevrolet engine, and he went on to win. So I don't know whether that suggests it was better than everybody else. I don't really think so.
So Jan Bikus, the window for pit stop should open up here very shortly.
That's right, Paul. And what's going to happen is that Paul Tracy will be in first because he was the first person to change tires. What's going to happen is they won't have tires here for Paul Tracy to change. That is because you don't change rain tires because they don't wear out like slicks do. It's not going to do anything. You want to have hot rain tires on there. So what we'll see is that Paul Tracy will pit first. It'll just be a very quick pit stop just for enough fuel to make it to the end. Now, Emerson Fittipaldi, for instance, he can come in at lap 89. They only need enough fuel then for 13 laps. It'll be a time stop, fuel only, very quick. But as we talked about, if the track dries, those who pitted later still have a chance to put on slick tires if they wanted to. Paul Tracy won't do that. First one in.
I assume from what you're looking at, Jan, that the track is not nearly dry enough to consider going to slicks.
No, I don't think so, Paul, but it isn't now for Paul Tracy. But what I'm saying is that it might be for Nigel Mansell or for Emerson Fittipaldi, who waited till later.
Well, of course, we saw the gamble being played the opposite way earlier when they stayed on the wet weather tires. I wonder, in the space of just over 20 laps, whether this racetrack would dry out enough to give somebody on slicks a better chance to make up some position at the end of the race. Right now, as we look out the booth and look at particularly here, I just can't see that happening. I just can't see it drying up.
It's very damp in this area, but take a look. They come off the festival curves now. When they get over toward the backside in the long high-speed areas, then it is fairly dry, but almost all of the braking areas are still damp.
And you can watch Tracy here. It gets light gray. See the light gray patches there? That's where it begins to dry up. I just don't have a feel for whether that would actually dry up quick enough or not.
The top three, Fittipaldi, Tracy, and Mansell, have all completed now their 80th lap of the 102-lap scheduled distance. You get a view of Mario Andretti, who runs 6th now. He is a lap behind the leader. Indication is from the pits now that Emerson Fittipaldi may head into the pits, and they're not sure why. He has a 30-second lead over second-place Paul Tracy.
You can clearly see there the line is drying, but it's very wet offline. We're going to watch, though, to see does Emerson make a stop if he does what he stops for, but there is still moisture coming down on some parts of the racetrack.
We watch second-place Paul Tracy, so Emerson now working through the festival corners and into the sweeper curves. So if he's going to come in, there he is. He should be there next lap around. Radio communication going back and forth as Emerson closes up very tightly to Ari Luyendyk. Jan Bikus? Jan, are you there?
Talking about Ari Luyendyk and we're also talking about Emerson Fittipaldi, is that he called in on the radio and said that he has either a tire going down or a flat-spotted tire. So the team rolled out the tires, were all ready, but then he didn't come in. So they're now trying to work out on the radios if he's going to be coming in. If he comes in now, he'll still make it to the end of the race. The reason that he would, and he has now continued down the front straightaway again, is because he has a suspect tire. Right now he's kind of feeling it out. He'll wait till lap 89 if it turns out a tire wasn't going down.
Doesn't seem to be affecting him. You're looking forward toward him from the camera mounted on Scott Brayton's car.
The only way he could get a flat spot is locking up one of those wheels under braking. We didn't see him do anything like that If a wheel weight comes off, it can give you such a severe vibration sometimes that you actually feel as if you may have a flat spot. It's obviously not enough to trouble Emerson at the moment to actually make an emergency pit stop.
Fittipaldi now is having his lead nibbled away just a little bit with his concern over the past few laps with his tires. He is now 27 seconds ahead, so 5 seconds have come off on the Tracy closure with Emerson Fittipaldi. Watch this one. This was a little bit earlier. You want to know how wet it is out there?
See how quickly it happens. He lost, did a 180, went backwards, and then straightened the car up again, kept the engine running, so he's back on the racetrack.
Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, you wonder about the mind games that are played on pit road. Take a look right over here through the crew. I don't know how well you can see it, but there are slick tires up on the wall in the Nigel Mansell pit, and they are preparing for him to come in. They want to make a front wing adjustment. He'll make the call as to whether or not they gamble and go to the slicks. One other thing compounding their situation, Willie T. Ribb's radio frequency bleeding over onto theirs. They had to send a crew member down to talk with Derek Walker and say, please call your driver by name. We'll call our driver by name, because Nigel thought that his crew was calling into the pits when in fact Willie T. was being summoned. Strange day in Portland.
Sometimes it's not so great to be totally high-tech, is it?
There you go. He's now called Dr. Nigel Mansell, by the way. He accepted a doctorate from a university in Birmingham last week during a trip back with his family back to his homeland. So now he is a Dr. Nigel Mansell.
Well, the doctor runs in third. He continues to chase Paul Tracy, who's 30 seconds ahead of him. But now Tracy is able to nibble away a bit on Fittipaldi. We're back in a rainy but somewhat drying Portland. The Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 round 7 of the PPG IndyCar World Series for the IndyCars. Emerson Fittipaldi leads. Nigel Mansell runs in second place, and the reason for that is that Paul Tracy came in and made his final stop, and in doing so he decided that it was not something that he should do. Something that he should not do is to change tires. Now here is Nigel Mansell in. Will he go over to the slicks? That's a very real possibility, Gary Gerald.
Indeed it is, Paul. Tommy Wirtz waves him into position. Nigel was on the radio, said he wants the dry tires. Here he is. We'll see if they change it. The air guns begin to chatter. He gambled earlier because he stayed out on the slicks almost the longest of any driver. But here he is now going to the slicks, the first man to do so. It's still very wet out there. Will this pay off or will it backfire for the points leader?
So a gamble and a great one for Nigel Mansell as he comes back into the fight.
Well, this is what you call going for it all, because it is such a risk now to go onto slicks. But you see the race leader Emerson Fittipaldi here. This will be a great judge for Mansell just how quickly he is going relative to somebody on wet weather tires. Easily goes down the inside, Fittipaldi does, but a big gamble by Mansell. It's the reverse of what he tried to do earlier. He's gambling that the line will dry significantly between now and the end of the race.
And of course that comparison right there doesn't really tell, because he also came out of the pits on very cold tires.
Cold tires. Cold slicks on a damp, wet track like this can be a nightmare.
They call him the Lion. And boy, look at him as he takes this gamble, trying to keep his points dominance in the PPG IndyCar World Series. With his pole, he moved to 4 points ahead. But now he wants to do everything he can to close on Fittipaldi and come away still as the points leader in this series.
And he daren't get offline here, because as long as he can stay on that relatively dry patch, he will be okay. But when he comes to make a pass on somebody, he has to move offline. Now on the front straight here, it's no problem. But watch how slick it will be when he gets into the festival curves here and he goes onto the concrete patch. Oh, real ginger, real slow, nice and delicate.
Even if Nigel can maintain his current position, he could leave this track with a 13-point lead in the points fight. But of course he would like to come up and take the lead of the race itself. And look at here, slick tires for Bobby Rahal.
More slicks. The two men that took the gamble earlier are the two men that are going back to the reverse gamble here, hoping this track will dry. Remember, Rahal said the reason, oh, what was that? Robbie Gordon had something fly up right across his some tissue paper or something they probably used to wipe his visor, and it blew right up in front of his face. Here it is again. Look at this. It's in the cockpit. Right up in front of his face. Japers, look, you weren't on the way into the braking zone there, Robbie. That'll stop the old heart.
No time to read that right now. I'll check it out a little bit later.
Yeah.
Emerson Fittipaldi in front. Tracy is second, 20 seconds. No, much further behind. Almost a full 60 seconds behind. Mansell is third. They have the equipment laid out for fourth place. Mario Andretti. Allenser Jr. runs in fifth place. Then Bobby Rahal, Mike Groff, Raul Boycell, Robbie Gordon, Ari Lyondike. Further down, 11, Scott Goodyear, Jimmy Vasser, Hiro Matsushita, Olivier Griard, and Scott Brayton in 15.
Well, 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 what have we got here? Mansell on slicks. Looks as if he is catching Emerson easily. So now he may force Fittipaldi's hand, because if he thinks Mansell is that much faster on slicks, that may force him into the pits to get slicks also. Look at this, Mansell is way quicker than Emerson.
Let's keep an eye on Fittipaldi. His team is prepared to move him onto slicks. If he would like to come in next time around, there they are. The Penske team has the tires in hand. He wants to hold Mansell off if he can, but I'm not so sure he can do that.
He's going to force his hand. If Emerson thinks he can stay out for 12 more laps and Mansell will not make up all that time, he might take the gamble. If he thinks Mansell's going to chew him up, oh, he's going to go to the pit lane right now. Forget it. He knows Mansell is too fast on slicks. He's got to match him, get on those dry weather tires.
Fittipaldi saw the challenge and accepted it, and now Jan Vikas is there to watch the chain.
Emerson Fittipaldi brings it in. He's got to be careful of the yellow lines as he comes across. They're very slick. Now remember, when he gets out of here, he's got to be careful of the pit speed violations, but where he's located, he's actually past the gun. So he shouldn't have a problem there. The dry tires are on. They didn't need much fuel. Wheel spin, gets a little bit sideways, and he's off.
Yeah, you know who's going to fall foul to this gamble by everybody else? Paul Tracy. Running second, and a very good second, elected not to change tires at all. So now he may be forced to make a pit stop. He is only 12 seconds ahead of Nigel Mansell.
Mario Andretti, fourth place, is in, Gary.
And this other member of the Newman Haas team is going for fuel only. He is going to stay on the wet tires. They're not changing, so they get enough fuel. He's gone in under 11 seconds.
Are we then seeing, Derek, a tactic by these two teams where they each elect to keep one car on dry and one on wet, or is that a driver decision?
Well, I would have thought it was a driver decision, but I mean, that's an interesting point there, that team cars go with a foot in each camp. But I can only say that
St. James off.
Yeah, you see Lynn St. James. I don't think she's kept the engine running here. That's the festival curves. But I can't understand, if Mansell was running that much faster than Emerson, why they wouldn't put Mario onto slicks. Unless, of course, it may rain again. Look outside the booth here. It looks clear, and the track certainly looks as if it's drying. Certainly not getting any wetter.
Drying very quickly, in fact. In fact, almost totally dry in some areas. Lynn St. James was able to get restarted. Mike Groff turns into the pits, where he will pick up, possibly move over to the dry tires as well. And the front straightaway, for the most part, is very dry. The last lap by Mansell turned at 106 miles an hour. He was averaging laps only at 87 miles an hour prior to that. So this track is dry, and it is getting very fast and doing so quickly. And because of that, the front of the field is beginning to close up. Fittipaldi is the leader, followed by Paul Tracy, and then Nigel Mansell. So the battle continues now. 90 laps are complete at Portland, 102 laps scheduled to do. The twin yellow flags at the starter stand tell the drivers, along with yellow flags standing at every corner, that they are going to full course yellow. That means that everyone slows down. The pace car will come out.
And you can see that Mansell did get up to and pass Paul Tracy. You watch what happens here. This was just a couple of minutes ago. Tries to pass Vassar, almost gets off the road, waves his fist. Mario goes by, and Paul Tracy is now right up behind.
Matsushita is sitting off the edge of the race course. So is Scott Brayton. That's the reason for the full course yellow. Now, what that's going to do is close up the front three cars, Fittipaldi, Mansell, and Paul Tracy. When Mario came by, that was just a move to try to get back on the lap. Here comes Paul Tracy into the pits. Jan Vikas waits for him.
Paul Tracy is in his way to the pits. Right behind him, we had Allenser Jr., who also came in. He came in before to pick up fuel, and he didn't change tires. He was back 2 laps later to get the dry tires. Now Paul Tracy is one of the last people to come in. We talked about it was not really his fault. It was that he happened to come in first. He got out of sequence. Now Paul Tracy, like all the front runners, are out on slicks.
Paul Tracy comes out on dry tires as well, and with a full course yellow, the front of the field should close up, and we should have a spectacular finish here at Portland. Back at the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 at Portland International. Look, the sun now shines in part of the race course, just as it did at the start of this race. We are under a full course caution while they get several disabled cars off of the running surface, and that should set up a tremendous sprint to the finish. 102 laps of scheduled distance. We are running on lap 93 right now. Just before the yellow came out, Nigel Mansell had cut Emerson Fittipaldi's lead drastically. In fact, he was at lap 90 sitting 31 seconds behind, and a lap later had cut that by 6 seconds to 25 seconds. So here is the order. Fittipaldi, Mansell, Paul Tracy, Bobby Rahal. 5th is Mario Andretti, then Allenser Jr., then Raul Boesel in 7th. 8th is Robbie Gordon, Mike Croft, Scott Goodyear is 10th. 11th, Ari Luyendyk, then Jimmy Vasser. Olivier Griard is 13th. Ross Bentley is 14th. Danny Sullivan is 15th. Hiro Matsushita, who was one of the disabled cars, is in 16th position in the scoring right now. So we still run under the full course yellow, and when they come back, it should be a run to the finish. Back at Portland International, still under yellow. The sun is shining down. And here's the way. We gave you the order of where they're lined up, but physically on the race course, there is Fittipaldi. You have to go 9 cars back to find Nigel Mansell, who is the 2nd place car, and then 2 more cars to find 3rd place Paul Tracy. But coming back to the green, Jan Beekes, you can really try to start your passing fairly early.
You're right, Paul. It's not the same as the start at the beginning of the race. What you have, and it was spoken about this morning in the drivers' meeting, it's not the same. When the green flag flies, you can pass as many cars as you want. It has nothing to do with the start-finish line. So with 9 cars in between, what they'll do is they'll actually be on the radios with their crew that are right across from the green flag. As soon as they get that radio call, they'll be on the gas. Let's check in with Gary Gerald.
Interesting that Paul was talking about the 9 cars between Fittipaldi and Mansell. The car that's right in front of Mansell, teammate Mario Andretti. There have been conversations here in both of the Newman Haas pits, I believe, regarding whether or not Mario would give way to Mansell. The radio, no comment whatsoever. I don't know if Mario, I don't think he wants to give away that spot.
Yeah, what? I think the radio's broken here. I can't hear you.
Come on now, Mario. Let's have a nice bit of gentleman's professional courtesy here. Move over and let them line me through.
Come on, Mario. Don't give him anything. Split decision here in the booth. So Fittipaldi, followed by Mansell, followed by Tracy. But great distance to make up between Mansell and Fittipaldi. Mansell, without question, will be the man to watch as the green flag comes out again.
And he will make the moves. Mansell in this type of situation will give it everything to try and catch that red and white Marlboro car, even though you have those 9 cars ahead of him. Now, I don't think those cars will hold Mansell up that much. They won't just move out of the way, but I mean, they know it's not a fight for position. And I think it's going to be incredible to watch Mansell here. Now, Jan mentioned it earlier. As soon as the flag goes green at the starter stand, if Mansell's back here on the back straight, he can start racing immediately and start passing.
So the field now somewhat cumbersome, moves through the corner, varying braking speeds here. And now they can begin to pick up the throttle as they watch for the green flag. There it is. The pace car comes down the pit area. Fittipaldi accelerates, looking back for Nigel. Way over to the inside of the course. He looks for position.
He's got 1.
Mario lets him through.
He's got 2. Now he's behind Luyendyk. Needs to get by him as soon as possible.
And Luyendyk will be tough. You have to tiptoe here because just offline it's still very wet.
Okay,
look at this.
He's got 4. He's got 5 cars. Almost 5 cars. He got 4.
Griard came off the course at the end of the corner because it was still slick there.
Oh, that was touch and go there. Mansell got a tremendous acceleration boost. Then it all suddenly funneled down, and we got ahead. We're now on board with the Rahal following Nigel Mansell.
Mansell just ahead, and then in front of him is Luyendyk. And Luyendyk is proving to be tough to handle.
Emerson remains remember, while we watch all this, he has the clear road ahead of him. No cars, no traffic. What was that? Something just suddenly died. Okay, Lyndike gets down, but Mansell is stuck behind Johnny Unser. Inside him. Rahal follows through. Where's Emerson? Emerson, there he is. So it's the full length of the front straight, and Bozell giving good chase to Emerson. Robbie Gordon is in a fight with Scott Goodyear.
97 laps complete, 5 to go. Paul Tracy closing in as well. So Paul Tracy is now pulling up to try to join this fight. Battle first, second, and third.
Mansell needs some help. He needs to get by the traffic, and he needs someone or something to slow Emerson down a little bit. But he has to be careful that Paul Tracy, and there's Paul Tracy, he's got to be careful as to how close Paul Tracy can get to him. Because remember, it's not just the race. This is a championship fight that Mansell is in.
And it is not a tremendous interval, first to second. It's only 9 seconds, and it's closing very quickly. Al Unser Jr. is locked in a battle here as well with Mario Andretti. So neither one of those are inclined to give Paul Tracy any particular help because they're in their battle, the battle of their own for 5th place.
That's right. Al Jr. is as anxious to get by Paul Tracy as Tracy is as anxious to get by Mario. So they have to just continue with their own private battles.
Again, the interval is the full length of the home stretch. Mansell still trying to catch Arie Luyendyk. Paul Tracy now making a move inside Sullivan and trying to put just a single car of Bobby Rahal between he and Mansell.
Now there's something we didn't expect. Arie Luyendyk certainly is able to pick up the pace and stay ahead of Mansell. In fact, pull away from Nigel Mansell. Of course, Arie struggled so much earlier in the race. We saw him off the road, but now he's well able to handle Mansell. Either he's going well or Mansell's having a problem.
The interval from Fittipaldi to Mansell remains at about 9.5 seconds. No particular benefit in that last lap. Paul Tracy has fallen back a bit, is now 14 seconds behind Nigel Mansell. He was 11 on the last lap, so traffic is very much a factor.
And of course, the gambles that Mansell and Rahal took earlier on were all thrown out the window with that full course yellow, because it allowed everybody to get into the pits, particularly Paul Tracy, get on slicks and get onto a fairly level playing field. But look at Bozell. I'm sure he wishes this was a legitimate dice for the lead, but in fact he is several laps down, 1 lap down.
Emerson Fittipaldi still in front, looking at a possible second win of the year, the Indianapolis 500 champion. But in that lap, Mansell whittled 2 seconds off of Fittipaldi's lead. He's now just over 7 seconds behind.
Incredibly, in the last 8 IndyCar races, which obviously goes back into last year, there have been 7 different winners. And in this year, we've had 5 different winners, and Nigel Mansell is the only repeat winner. Maybe Emerson might make it 2. I don't think Bozell wants to pass Emerson, because remember, he would have to do a full lap. So unless he wants to show off and show that he is actually faster than the race leader, he'd actually have to do a full extra lap. But I mean, he looks very threatening there, doesn't he?
It wouldn't be wise. He's sitting in 7th place. He is not being challenged by anyone for position at the time. The logical thing would be to wait station just behind Fittipaldi.
There's Emerson. There's Mansell. Still cannot quite deal with Luyendyk. But look at this. Here's the challenge.
And now Mansell has it with just 2 laps to go. But the interval extends. No, it drops down now to 8 seconds. 8 seconds separate Mansell and Fittipaldi. 2 laps to go. But now Mansell has a clear run on him.
He's too far behind, I think, though. He's on dry track, no traffic. Now he can give it a good run. We saw him get those rear wheels off onto the dirt. Oh, he gives it everything. Locking up those front wheels on the infield section, trying to catch Emerson.
This is classic Mansell, giving it everything he possibly can to catch up.
We mentioned it earlier. He's got to watch Tracy. Only, as you saw by that graphic there,
there's Tracy.
Just over 4 seconds behind Mansell.
Mansell would have to close on Boissel and get around in order to battle with Fittipaldi. But here is where the trouble could come from. Here comes the white flag. 1 more lap to go. The distance is still 8 seconds.
Bozell stays behind. He doesn't need to pass Emerson. He doesn't need to do that extra 2 miles just in case anything happens. Robbie Gordon now is up behind Bozell. That is not a fight. Oh, that is a fight for position.
Absolutely it is.
It is a fight for position.
So Gordon and Bozell will battle.
That's the reason why Bozell would need to get by Emerson.
Exactly, and they are fighting for 7th place.
Robbie Gordon always seems to get into these fights at the end of races for position, and he is spectacular. But Robbie Gordon, one of the stars of the future, he only has this straight and the last section of curves to try and take that position from Bozell.
So Emerson Fittipaldi runs now for the checkered flag. He is unchallenged. The battle for 7th place goes on behind him at the same time. Paul Tracy is trying to close on Nigel Mansell. The final sweeping carousel turn for Emerson Fittipaldi as he comes down the straightaway. Watch Robbie Gordon as he tries. Bozell behind him. He can't get it done. It is Nigel Mansell that streams across the line now in 2nd place, and Paul Tracy will settle for 3rd. So the race has been run. Al Unser Jr. is passed by Rahal right at the line, or just before the line. So they finish Fittipaldi in 1st, followed by Mansell, then Paul Tracy, then Bobby Rahal, and then Al Unser Jr., followed by Mario Andretti, Raul Boesel, Robbie Gordon, Mike Roth, and Ari Luyendyk. But Emerson Fittipaldi has taken the win. Today's coverage from Portland of the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by your local Yamaha dealer, who invites you to see their exciting line of motorcycles, ATVs, and water vehicles. Emerson Fittipaldi has scored his 19th IndyCar win, and the sun shines down on Winner's Circle. Here's Gary.
Boy, indeed it does. 3 times he's been 3rd, 3 times 2nd, and I should say 2 times 3rd, 2 times 2nd, now 2 times the winner in Portland. You did it in the rain, you did it in the sunshine. This is a busy, hectic day, Mo.
Well, it was very difficult to pass Nigel. I think when I tried on the braking on the outside and Nigel locked the wheels went straight, I think that was the biggest moment for me on the race, and then just carry on and hold the lead. I mean, the car was fantastic. I mean, the team made a beautiful job. Every pit stop was really quick, really fast.
You were 34 seconds up in the wet. Then he came in and went to the dries and started to put the pressure on. Did that put you in a tough spot?
Well, that's 1 lap to go. I call Chuck and I say I want to go on dry as well, and I knew on dry tires I could dice again.
So a double winner this season now and climbing up in the point standings. Congratulations.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks.
All right, let's go now to Jan Beekes, I believe.
We're standing by with Nigel Mansell. And Nigel, you were the last driver to go onto the wet tires, but yet the first driver to go on slicks. It almost paid off for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a drying line. The Penske car ran much quicker than Lola today. The only way we were trying to get back on terms with them was to take a few chances, and you know, I stayed out on slicks as long as I could until it was really pouring, and then I was the first on slicks, and I think I made quite a gain there, but they just had too much for us today.
It was some brilliant driving, but you still have that points lead.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had to conservatively protect that, and I was pushing real hard, and at the end I don't know whether Emerson was just taking it easy, but I was catching him quick, and I just wish there was about another 5 to 10 laps and we would have had an interesting time.
Thank you, Nigel. Let's go to Gary.
And here's Paul Tracy. And Paul, this is your first time to run an Indy car in the rain. What kind of an adventure was it for you?
Well, it was a pretty good adventure. I couldn't stay with Emerson once it started to rain, but I was having a good battle with Mansell, and you know, I feel pretty good about that. We battled right down to about the last 10 laps, and he got his slicks on before I did, and he was able to get around me. So, you know, it was a good race for the whole Marlboro crew, and I'm real happy to just get some points.
You betcha, and finish your race. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Paul?
So there's the top 3 for you as we take a look now at the order of finish here in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. How's this for a fact? Thus far this year, the Penske team and the Newman-Haas team have led 1,233 miles. All other teams have only led 375 miles. 375 versus 1,223. Shows you exactly what we suggested at starting. This is still a battle between 2 teams. And what does it do to the points? Well, Nigel Mansell still remains out in front. In fact, pulls ahead of Raul Boesel. And Emerson Fittipaldi stays in 3rd place. So we have seen Nigel accomplish what he needs to accomplish by staying ahead in the points. But Fittipaldi score a 2nd win for the season.
I think we also saw that the Lola will have to make their cars a little bit faster if Nigel Mansell is to have a level playing field and a realistic chance to challenge these Penske cars for the overall season's championship.
So congratulations to Emerson Fittipaldi, who wins at Portland International. He won here in '89. He's done it again and become the second man this season to score 2 wins in the IndyCar. Next, the IndyCars head to the Burke Lakefront Airport at Cleveland. I'm Paul Page. For Derek Daly, Gary Gerald, and Jan Beekes. So long from Portland.